Welcome and good morning, good late morning. Thank you very much for being here. My name is Tim McCosker, and you may have seen in some of the program materials that I'm an attorney at Glaser Weil, but in fact there's a bit of a change in my life. As of February 1st, I will be the CEO at Altasea at the Port of Los Angeles. So I'm very pleased to be associated with Altasea, and you'll see that's also a good ethical disclosure because there's a lot of Altasea on this panel. And so I wanted to get that clear at the beginning. We're going to be talking about, of course, the blue economy and blue tech. And we have a great panel here today to walk us through it. I want to introduce the panel before we get to the presentations. We have Dr. Sandra Whitehouse to my immediate right. She's a consultant who served over 25 years as an ocean policy advisor to multiple organizations and institutions, using her marine science expertise to advise clients on all kinds of issues to advance ocean health and to sustainably develop coastline and offshore projects. Dr. Whitehouse holds a BS from Yale University and a PhD in biological oceanography from the Graduate School of Oceanography at the University of Rhode Island. I'm also thrilled and pleased to say that Dr. Whitehouse is the Chief Scientific Officer for Altasea at the Port of Los Angeles, so we're very honored to have her. She's the Senior Policy Advisor to the Ocean Conservancy and a Senior Fellow at the Atlantic Council. So welcome, Dr. Whitehouse. Thank you for being with us. Next, to my far right, we have Don Liu. And Don Liu has been a dear friend of mine for many, many years. He has a really impressive record in government, particularly with the City of Los Angeles. He currently serves as the Executive Director of the Los Angeles Department of Convention and Tourism Development. Before heading up the CTD, Don was the Deputy Executive Director and the Chief of Staff at the Port of Los Angeles. He was the second in command there over the busiest container port in North America, head of the port's external bureau, and was also very instrumental in waterfront development, integrating the port activities with the community, which we're going to talk about in just a bit. Between Don and Dr. Whitehouse is a new friend of mine, and that's Michael Jones. Michael is the founder and president of the Maritime Alliance, a nonprofit industry association he founded in 2007. Its mission statement is promoting sustainable, science-based ocean and water industries. While it began in San Diego and originally focused, I'm sure, on San Diego, it's the largest blue tech cluster in the United States, and it has a growing number of members nationally and internationally. So welcome to all of our panelists. I'd like to begin, if I may, with Dr. Whitehouse and invite her to the podium to give a presentation and an overview really on what blue tech is and the importance of blue tech in the oceans economy and sustaining the ocean.
Thank you. Yeah, give me a quick tutorial. Thank you. Just this?
Right, yeah.
Okay, thank you. Well, first of all, I think I might need to change some of my titles since I realize senior is in every single title, and I'm not sure that's a good thing at my age, but anyway, I would like to just start off with a comment about the blue economy. I do attend a lot of international conferences, especially with ocean focuses, and really every single one of them, the Our Oceans Conference that was started by Secretary Kerry, the Economies Ocean Summit that's run by the Journal. Everybody's talking about the growth of the blue economy and how we're going to capture that in this coming century. We are looking at, in the next 10 years, hundreds of innovations. I think that number is probably small, more like thousands, as well as hundreds of millions of jobs in this growing part of our global economy. As you've already heard, I'm here representing Altasea as the Chief Scientific Officer, and I'm going to talk about how Altasea is working to grow the blue economy, and specifically one of the areas that we're focusing on, which is underwater robotics, or what we call blue tech or blue technology. But first, let me give you sort of an overview of what I'm talking about when we say the blue economy, and you'll probably hear more about this from Mr. Jones as well. So we have many existing aspects of the blue economy, some like commercial fishing, which have been around for not only centuries but millennium. We have our security needs, that are very integrated into the oceans. We have shipping, cruise ships, lots of shoreside recreational opportunities. We have offshore oil and gas, and we have things like whale watching. Many of these activities, in particular things like whale watching and fishing, are actually dependent upon the ocean being healthy. So when we talk about the blue economy, we are mainly talking about sustainable economic growth in the oceans. Some of these other activities like oil and gas, which are certainly considered part of our blue economy, but in many cases those activities are putting the oceans at risk. We also have a really emerging blue economy. We have existing uses, like in the upper left-hand corner. Shipping has obviously been an existing use for centuries, but it's now going to take place in new areas like the Arctic. And we have to make sure that those new shipping lanes are sited in ways to minimize any risks or impacts. We have things like offshore aquaculture, seen in the upper right here, which is going to be very important to the world as we look for food security from the oceans. And of course, we've got some really exciting new technologies with respect to renewable energy. We have hydrokinetic turbines that are under the water that are harnessing the vast energy of our currents. These are also being used for waves and other technology for thermal differences in the ocean to capture energy. And we have a growing offshore wind component of our economy worldwide. I'm very proud to say, as a native Rhode Islander, that the first 5 offshore turbines are now operating in the United States in just offshore of Rhode Island in state waters. This is really important. The U.S. has actually been pretty far behind, especially the EU countries, with respect to offshore wind development. We also have a bunch of new technologies being developed. What you see in the upper left is a floating platform with offshore wind turbines of a different kind. Having offshore wind turbines on platforms that are floating as opposed to fixed in the ocean floor is going to transform where these can be sited, especially in California waters, which are quite deep. We have these offshore aquaculture, like these huge bowls that are actually quite far offshore and are tethered to the bottom, greatly also expanding our areas we can use for aquaculture. You might hear from Mr. Jones about this project. This particular one is in Japan. This is an offshore floating port. And then we have some even further out technologies. Microsoft has this really cool project called the Natick Project, which is a project to develop servers that can be placed under the ocean so that seawater and the cool, deeper ocean waters can be used to cool their servers, which is a big part of their energy needs. This is already in the second phase of testing. We have deep sea mining. Just for scale, please look at the small person walking alongside the base of this tractor. We are running out of some key metals, including zinc and copper, on land. These are important for our electronics. These technologies are being developed. The first lease ever in the world was just put out for a company in Papua New Guinea to mine with these tractors going along the bottom and sucking all the slurry up to the mothership. As you can imagine, all of these things, we need really good information to know what's down there and what kind of habitat there is before we start working on some of these new technologies. And of course, on top of all of these ocean uses and the new emerging technologies and future uses, we have dramatically changing environmental conditions. This shows the abundance of lobster in 1995, and then in 2014. And what you see is a really rapid shift of the center of the lobster population on the East Coast moving north because of warming ocean temperatures. We also have an increasing demand for real-time data. This is a pilot who brings ships into the port of Boston. He is relying on the information that's coming out of one of these buoys that tracks individual whales to know in real time where they are to make sure that they can avoid ship strikes like the one you see in that picture. So we've come a long way in the last 150 years of how we collect ocean data. This is how we did it 150 years ago, very rudimentary submarines, divers. Now what we're doing is we're collecting ocean data largely with underwater robotics. And this is a key part of the blue tech sector. Just to give you a sense of scale, this one in the upper left is about 2 by 2 feet. It's tethered. It can go down and examine, for example, a wind turbine's feet and make sure that things aren't growing on it. The one down in the lower left is called Wave Glider. It looks like a surfboard. It's about the size of a surfboard. It goes up and down in the ocean, about in the top 500 feet, to collect information like temperature and pH. Hercules, you can see, is sort of a medium-sized one. That's one of Dr. Ballard's underwater robots, and I'll mention that a little bit more in a minute. And then in the lower right, we see the Echo Voyager, which is Boeing's. It's about 30 feet long. It's basically an unmanned submarine designed to go deep under the Arctic ice and down into deep sea trenches. So what are we using these robots for? Well, we're using them for things like, I'm just going to give you some examples, like monitoring. This is a robot that went down to monitor the plume on the bottom from the Deepwater Horizon spill. We're using it to meet a lot of our managing needs, such as going down and counting commercially valuable species like red snapper, or counting things like lionfish that are invasive in some of the areas of the Gulf Coast. A lot of conservation communities have turned to underwater robotics to look for things like deep sea corals. We didn't even know there were corals in the deep sea, down in the deep trenches, till about 20 years ago. Now we recognize that they're a very fragile and important habitat, so we need to actually map where they are. And of course, for exploration. This is Bob Ballard's, one of his underwater robots. He was the person who found the Titanic among many other sunken vessels. Sadly, we need these underwater robots for things like searches. This company called Ocean Infinity has just launched another search for the downed Malaysian Airlines this month. Hopefully they'll find it. We are using incredible diversity of underwater robotics in developing wind projects. This particular one goes along the bottom and looks at electronically the cables that go from the wind turbine to shore to make sure they haven't been uncovered or disturbed in any way. We have aquaculture facilities using these kinds of small robots. Instead of sending a diver down to make sure their nets aren't torn or anything, they can send a robot down, much cheaper, and they work on weekends. At Altasea, we are really excited that our new innovation center, and you'll hear more about this from Mr. Liu, includes a very strong focus on blue technology. These are just some of our existing business partners, Boeing, Blue Robotics, C-Trek. We also have Dr. Robert Ballard as our key education partner as part of the Innovation Center, because we are very focused on making sure that the next generation is educated about blue technology and ultimately is able to envision a job in the blue tech space. These are some of the metrics that this is his ship, the Nautilus, which is tied up at the Altasea dock. He's training teachers, he's doing live stream views to classrooms all around the country, and we have a lot of students who are coming directly to the site to get a tour of the boat. We have a great partnership with the Boys and Girls Club, and they are helping get those students to the site and to learn about his work. For those of you who are social media followers, maybe these aren't big numbers by Hollywood standards, but they're certainly big numbers by ocean education standards. So we're very happy that we're having the reach that we are. And then finally, at Alta-Sea, we are very keen to make sure that in this blue technology sector, we are able to train students and develop jobs for students all along the educational spectrum, from high school diplomas, community college, university, up to PhD level scientists, because it's important that we are looking at jobs in the blue economy for people with different educational backgrounds. So thank you. I would say please go to altasea.org, or even better yet, come down and see the site, and you'll hear more about it shortly.
Thank you, Sandra. Thank you very much, Sandra. So I want to introduce next Michael, who has been laboring in the fields or in the oceans for many, many years on this, to describe his model of stitching together folks that are important regionally, nationally, and now internationally. So Michael, the floor is yours.
If somebody could help me with the next presentation. So as I'm waiting for this to be forwarded, I want to just thank David and Verde Exchange, because it's great that you're bringing the ocean into this dialogue. I mean, I wish this was all blue up here in front, but that's fine. Green is fine for the time being. Second thing is, yesterday I sat in a number of the water panels, and there was two things that really struck me. Number one was they talked about one water. Well, believe me, this is one water for the world. And so you can't just say we're looking at fresh water and wastewater. You really need to be looking at the ocean. And the ocean is going to solve many of the problems that we humans have. And the second comment that was made multiple times is we can't look at a Los Angeles-owned solution. It was repeatedly said we have to be talking regionally. And we believe that is very important, and so we have a big effort in terms of trying to work together on a regional basis. That's not going to help me. I need my presentation up. Oh. Thanks. Real-time delivery. So let me just start and say that most people don't have any sense of the size of the blue economy. And if you look at the worldwide space economy, in 2015 the estimate was $355 billion. In 2010 the worldwide wastewater industry was estimated to be $500 billion. Thank you, perfect. And if you looked at the OECD study that came out in 2016, it showed the ocean economy, and this is the traditional ocean economy, not all the new great stuff that Sandra's talking about. I don't have to call her Ms. Whitehurst. I'm going to say Sandra. All right. I think it's very important to understand first the size of this enormous industry. And if you put the blue economy together with the water economy, you're talking about $2 trillion. This is enormous, and the amount of jobs are really millions and millions of jobs. So the second thing is, why do we care? Well, first, it's enormous, it's growing, every second breath comes from the ocean, and the big 5 issues related to humanity: food, water, ocean energy, medicine, and real estate. How are we going to deal with water rising? And we're going to have to go out in the ocean. The Dutch are already doing it. In northern Adriatic, they're building a floating port. The Chinese have offered to build a floating port off the United States on the East Coast because we don't have that expertise yet. And most everybody came to California in the early days, and we found it. We found California by sea, but we forgot that. So what is a cluster? A business cluster, is a regional concentration of related industries that help each other be competitive globally. And an organized cluster is where really recognition, funding, and leadership intersect. And so you organize that opportunity, and you hopefully really magnify your ability to be successful. As Tim was nice enough to say, we are recognized as one of the world's leading organized blue tech clusters, and this is what we believe. We believe that you should be working on the triple bottom line, and you need to balance economic development and conservation. So we are the largest U.S. cluster, about 90 national and international members, and we try and create a blue voice. We think that's very important. Tim once again said that our mission statement in the lower right is to promote sustainable, science-based ocean and water industries, and we look at both oceans and waters in that one water concept in the broadest sense. I'm not going to spend time on this, but 2016, the San Diego EDC did a study of all the clusters, organized clusters in San Diego, and it turned out, although they'd never studied the ocean before, until we did a study with the San Diego Regional EDC in 2012, that we were the largest innovation economy in San Diego. Think about that. We were built around the Navy, built around a harbor, we were found by sea, and nobody had ever studied the blue economy. And frankly, around the world, that's typically what's happening. And the OECD, this study they did that showed $1.5 trillion in 2010 and $3 trillion estimated by 2030, was their first attempt. And we were actually invited to speak at an event in Paris this past November, because this is amazing. You know, it's like you open a door and a cornucopia of great jobs falls out. And one of the things that's interesting about these jobs is they're great paying, good paying jobs, blue collar and white collar. And you're talking about a lot of exports. So this is where we live. This is where organized blue tech clusters live, at that intersection of the triple helix: academia, industry, and then policymakers. And we have to have all three engaged. Now, if you're in Ireland and South Africa, they talk about the fourth, and that's the public. And of course, it's critically important, and we address the public through our educational outreach that I'll come to in a minute. I won't spend any time on this. This is just to show the diversity of logos. Our members are increasingly national and international. This is great as far as I'm concerned. The upper left, you see Canada. We are a strategic partner with the U.S. Department of Commerce. As you go down that list, Scripps Institution Oceanography, Oceans Advanced, the leading cluster in Canada, the County of San Diego, Marine Institute, that's the national cluster in Ireland, World Trade Center. If you go all the way across on the right, it's the leading cluster in Spain, and you can work your way around. So we have clusters nationally and internationally. It's very important for us to work together. We launched a Blue Tech Cluster Alliance in January of 2017. We have 9 members. If you count that, it won't come up to 9 because 2 went together into a blue growth network in the UK. But 9 of the leading blue tech clusters in the world, we've created criterion by which one can join, and our goal is to grow that, but it has to be meaningful for the people that are involved. So we're doing a lot in terms of capacity building, and I wrote down a couple of kind of bullet points here. So international outreach, we are reaching out to Brazil, Chile, Mexico. We are talking with Baja California about creating a chapter of ours with South Africa and other countries. And then in domestic outreach, we're advising Alaska, Hawaii, Mississippi, Rhode Island. In the state of Washington, we were selected to do a study for the Port of Seattle, looking at the creation of a marine innovation center there. And then closer to home, California and Cali Baja. We've done a lot of education at the state level. State Controller Betty Yee, some of you may know, has become a big convert to the blue economy, and that's wonderful, and it's people like her that really help us push this forward. I mentioned the Baja California cluster. We're talking about a possible TMA cluster up in Northern California in the Bay Area, and then we're of course very pleased to be talking with All2Sea about ways that we can collaborate. And if you believe in regionalization, then clearly this is a great opportunity. I'm not going to go through this, but we're doing a lot to promote blue tech clusters worldwide, including, and these are some of the things on the bottom that we do together. But the Economist is doing its 5th annual World Ocean Summit. They've never focused on clusters before. They chose us. We were the ones that introduced them to us. And so that little yellow circle on the far right, that shows that they're doing increasingly work related to ocean economy. And so we are their advisors related to a blue economy cluster workshop they're going to be doing there. So what are the needs? We need to be thinking about the blue tech entrepreneurs of tomorrow. We need to have a much better locally sourced technical workforce, whether it's Los Angeles or Northern California or Seattle or San Diego. It's pretty high price to bring somebody in. We've got to do a much better job of bringing all communities in, including underserved communities, and that's including veterans, women, and of course people of color. We need financing. This is an enormous growing industry, and yet there's virtually no financing. So our answers, one is we're launching a major educational effort beginning in 2018, including with the San Diego Unified School District. I was able to launch with my wife a Blue Tech Foundation to start funding educational programs. We've received some other funding, so we're really in a great position in terms of doing this, but we're also going to be looking for funding around the United States, because everything we do, we try and prepare so that it can be transported to other areas. And finally, we need to create a blue tech investment fund. It's on my personal goal for 2018. So if you happen to know anybody that has some shekels in their pocket and would like to know more about the ocean and water and educating the youth and investing in great companies, whether they're here in Alta Sea or they're in Rhode Island, please talk to us, because we all can benefit from that. And then finally, if you want to go quickly, you go alone. If you want to go far, you want to go together. So thanks very much.
Thank you very much, Michael. I should also, when I introduced Doan, I didn't disclose another job that Doan has. Doan is also on the board of directors, a trustee for Alta Sea, besides his job downtown for trade and tourism, and he's a natural fit for stitching together what Alta Sea is trying to do in the community. And so one place, and I also want to say one place where it's very, very clear that the ocean is important to the community is in San Pedro and then in the harbor area, where we know that the Long Beach, LA ports are that combination of port complex is the busiest in the world, I think. At least if we don't, let's just keep saying it, Doan. And so Doan was instrumental in bringing the benefits of that the port brings to the industry to the community. And so he's a natural fit for Alta Sea, and I want him to talk a little bit about the Alta Sea model. Thank you.
What's mine called?
Are you on the same drive here?
Yeah, it's called to use. It should be there. We put them all together.
This one here?
Nope,
Oh, it's on the other.
there were two on that disk to use. Yes.
I get stressed out when I have to touch a computer. I can only imagine with a bunch of people watching you.
Thank you.
Bravery and the expertise of this gentleman is.
You're the blue technician. My name's Doan Liu. I work for the City of Los Angeles and I run the Department of Convention and Tourism. But my remarks today are going to be really coming from my old job, which was as Chief of Staff at the Port of Los Angeles. We're actually the largest port in the Western Hemisphere, 10th largest in the world. But you may wonder why the Port of Los Angeles, that does 9 million containers a year and over 400, almost 500 million in annual revenue now, would care about a project like this. And you can see, hopefully you can see, where we're positioned, Alta Sea here. Where Alta Sea is positioned as in relation to the entire port. I'm sorry. This one here? Okay. I'm going too fast. I am not the technician. Okay, so next one. Here's an overview of the LA waterfront, and I was very fortunate to have the responsibility of all things not having to do with cargo, which was my lucky, really my fortunate position. And a lot of what is going on for over 100 years in the harbor area was this effort from residents to lessen the impact of this industry on our neighborhood. I say our neighborhood. Tim and I both live in San Pedro, and have seen what the port has done over the recent years. So there was an effort for the last 30, 40 years to deindustrialize the west side of the main channel. We used to have Todd shipyards, a lot of lumber terminals, and a lot of shipping. And all of that has now since been moved to the other side of the channel onto Terminal Island. And so now how do we give back to the community? Really, our social license to operate as a port relies on good relationships with the community. And so what the community really wanted was a vibrant LA waterfront, both in San Pedro and in Wilmington. So a lot of the efforts have been around the cruise terminal towards the north, which is on the far right-hand side. And then moving down, we have the USS Iowa battleship that was recently installed. We're currently redeveloping Ports of Call, a 60-year-old New England village that somehow appeared in San Pedro, and then a marina. And so Alta Sea came to us as just we call it a game changer. It's actually the first time that one of these waterfront projects has a true economic impact. I mean, we're thankful for the retail and restaurants that happen, but those are 200 or 300 minimum wage jobs selling T-shirts and tacos. I mean, that's nothing wrong with that, and it's great for our economy and great for tourism. But what we're trying to create at Alta Sea is a real campus of high-skill, high-wage jobs. We're creating an environment for scientists to invent things that businesses can sell. And we think that's going to be hundreds and hundreds of PhDs someday living in San Pedro that could really change our economy. Here's a closer view of the actual campus. The buildings to the south of this slip is our first phase, and I'll show a little bit more of there. But and then at the very tip is Warehouse 1, which is the very first warehouse that was built. I think these buildings were originally built in the early 1900s and used as storage and warehousing and terminal space. So our community, we have our own triad as well, Mike. We like to talk about science, business, and education, and that's the community that we're building. And like I said, the campus that we're building, our vision is an ocean that will sustain future generations, and it's really using science to accelerate collaboration and to educate, inspire students while creating jobs at the same time. And like I said, it's going to be a campus. It is a campus where scientists are going to create businesses. Here's our logo collection as well. I won't go through all of them, but we're very fortunate to have a lot of great partners, including universities such as UCLA, USC, and I don't know how many, Cal State, 29 Cal State campuses as well. In addition to our business partners. This is our most recent project, our Innovation Center, through the generosity of the Lacretz Family Foundation. We just had our groundbreaking with the mayor and opened this Innovation Center. This is the exterior that was just built for the event, and we're in the process of continuing this along the front edge of the project. Some of our tenants include the Ocean Exploration Trust, which is Bob Ballard's organization, and we talked about him earlier, and Catalina Sea Ranch, which is a aquaculture company that has, is it the only federally licensed lease on the West Coast to do mostly mussels at this time, I think. Here's the Nautilus, which is Bob Ballard's research vessel, and we're pleased to be its home at times. This is a future phase. This will be the education pavilion, and it will be our opportunity to host a lot of workshops and conferences in addition to classroom education programs. Here is our science center. This is what the building looks like currently, and what we hope to convert it to once the Science Center is open. And the interior will include lecture and flex space and obviously some research areas. This will be on the northern edge of the slip, and this will be our kind of public-facing engagement area, and this will be the kind of the wow moment when people come and visit our Alta-C campus. And it will include some exhibition space here and an auditorium overlooking the main channel, or the Alta-C channel. So our business model depends on contributions from individuals and institutions, and we're kind of currently transitioning, which is why it was so great to bring Tim McCosker on board, transitioning from a kind of a fundraising operation to now including a research and a real facility operation too. So what are the terms? We're moving from contributed income to earned income, and so we're actually going to be charging our tenants rent and hopefully getting to a place where we can sustain ourselves operationally, but then continue on the fundraising as well. Here are the development approach and funding needs. We've raised $5 million completed. That means, okay, and then the Innovation Center is our first phase, $19 million project. We've obtained $10 million towards that project. The Education Pavilion and Plaza is $6 million project, and we're $2 million obtained there. And then lastly, the Science Center and the Engagement Center. So a total of $145 million project just for these first two phases. Is that my last slide? That's it.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
I do want to point out before we get to some questions that besides Doan as a trustee, we also are honored to have Yehudi Gaffin, or everybody knows him as Gaff, one of our trustees here. And one of our newest trustees, Michael Kelly, is here. So thank you very much. But more importantly, Doan was right. We're moving from this formational stage, this fundraising stage, to this operational stage, where we're going to be stepping into construction and stepping into earned income. The person who brought us here, the great executive director of Alta-C, is Jenny Crusoe, who's here. So Jenny, thank you very much for being here. And Jenny and I are a team working together to go to the next step. But I did want to give an opportunity for you all to ask questions of this great panel. If anyone has any questions, I can start out with one. And this is going to be some free consulting that I won't pay for. Michael, what advice would you have for Alta-C as they move from this phase to the next phase, given your years of experience?
I'd start with a study of how big your blue economy is. I'd do an inventory of what you have here. I don't think I've seen anything like that yet. That study we did in 2012 was really critical for us to get the political and economic support. And I would project the way Cove is projecting around the world. Out of Halifax, they've got a big influx of capital and building an incubator and a whole series of other things, but they go to shows around the world. And so you'll need to position yourself as a location to attract the companies you want. And have a consistent message. As I understand, there's more of an interest to be a real estate landlord, attracting these great companies and promoting the campus, and of course tech transfer, and that's all terrific, but you need to bring people in both locally and regionally and internationally, and being part of a larger regional approach, I think, could be helpful in that as well, because you geographically sit right in the middle of the incredible Southern California Bight, which is one of the most prolific and productive water kind of bodies in the world.
Thank you very much. Yes, other questions? Ann. Ann Carpenter, who's one of our great contributors. A paying tenant.
So my question actually is around the cluster developments and ways to collaborate. So the one thing about cluster development is really a lot about economic development and job creation in a very clear region. And having built that up and continued support that very heavily in San Diego, a lot of what we're talking about, some of the
to try that, Doan?
No.
Sandra?
Sure. You do mean between Altasea and the Maritime
And
Alliance?
Maritime Alliance
Yeah.
and Port Excel and Port of Rotterdam and the ones going up in Seattle, all of these, where do you see some of the first opportunities to benefit from the collaborative?
Do you want to start? Do you want me to?
Go ahead.
Well, first of all, I've only been on the Altasea project for just a little under 3 years, but one of the very first phone calls I made was to Michael. So we were coordinating from I think at the very beginning. We are also coming at this from, I think, common goals, but with slightly different starting points. Altasea has this, as you saw in Doan's slides, amazing 180,000 square foot facility, which you know well, and with also really unusual assets in terms of having thousands of feet of linear feet of berth with quite deep water and high water quality. So we actually already have a lot of demand for that space just from the local businesses that need that kind of a waterfront space. I'll let Michael speak about the Maritime Alliance. Their initial work was to do this inventory, which I think would be very useful to figure out sort of where all the blue tech companies were in the San Diego area. We have people coming to us every week wanting to be at our space. And so we are more, well, I think of Altasea not as real estate developers, but as conveners, curators of who's going to be there. We're not going to have a tenant that doesn't fit within our goals and missions of sustainable oceans. And so we're curators, we're conveners, we're also sort of facilitators. And I think one of our important roles is to make sure that the scientists are working with the businesses as well as educating the public. And Doan also referred to this about this collaboration. Collaboration happens more organically when people are actually in a physical space, but it accelerates when there's an organization that's actually facilitating that collaboration, and that's part of our job.
So obviously this is a big topic and it'd take a long time, more than the 3 or 4 minutes that we probably have. Two. We're trying to assist clusters all around the United States and around the world. We're a strategic partner with the U.S. Department of Commerce. We launched this Blue Tech Cluster Alliance. We're all different, each of the clusters. Each of them has kind of an organization with an executive director or a president, whatever they call it. They each fund themselves differently. So we revel in our differences and try and leverage off those. There isn't a formal cluster here. That's not what I think is being created. And so there's the potential, in our opinion, to look at the whole Southern California bight, from northern Baja California up to Santa Barbara. And I think because of this unique asset that is right here, and again, physically is kind of the middle of that, there's an opportunity to think, back to what I said earlier, regionally, and I mean super regionally, not just the region around Los Angeles and Orange County, but really and playing an amazing role nationally and internationally. So I'd like to think that the discussions we'll have with Altasea may allow us to come up with some form factors and ways to collaborate that could be, I don't want to say groundbreaking, but they could be world recognition worthy. So I think there's some great opportunities to work together. And again, that's why I started with my comments about One Water and regionalization.
If I can just make one more comment, I think one of the things that we see at Altasea, and Doan referred to it being an integral part of the port and the port community, there are ports all around the world that have these spaces that aren't being used because of containerization. All ports want to be good community partners. We see this as a model that could be replicated in many other places.
I think we'll do one concluding question here, or maybe not, maybe two.
Hi, my name is Conway Gibson. I run a makerspace in Miami, Florida, and we focus on clean tech, space tech, and blue tech companies. My question is more about what type of supports are in place for the entrepreneurs.
First of all, compliments to the work you're doing and the fact that you are focused on blue tech. Fabulous. Happy to talk to you further afterwards. One of the reasons we wanted to launch a blue tech investment fund is there are no funds in the United States. They exist in Singapore and they exist in Europe, but nobody has launched a blue tech investment fund. On a national level, we were also chosen to put together the first ever Maritime Technology Export Initiative. That's not going to be for a startup company, but we are working with very early stage companies, and we've engaged the U.S. Department of Commerce. There's now 150 employees for the U.S. government around the world whose job it is to help companies from all across the United States to be more successful. So there are resources that are developing, and I could spend more time, but we are doing what we can, and I know Sandra is as well, and other people, to promote, first of all, recognition of this industry. One of the biggest problems is it's out there, you can't see it. So again, you're to be complimented with what you're doing. Many resources are going to be regional or they're going to be statewide, but we are getting some traction on the national level.
Thank you. I think we are out of time. Let's thank Sandra and Michael and Doan for their presentation. And I'm sure they'll stick around, Paula, for example, if anybody has a question. But thank you very much.